Hey, hello and welcome. This is Summer Piha from the Conscious.Classroom Certification Model. Check us out at cccmodel.com. You're listening to Let's Talk ECE, the place on the internet where we talk tips, tricks, and perspective shifts related to all things early childhood. Join Summer and Rachel in their mindset shifting discussions on common topics in the early childhood world. You'll hear real stories from their time working together as an owner-director pair and how they learn to see things from each other's perspectives over the years, so you can learn how to openly discuss these viewpoints and find common ground within your leadership team. Hello, and welcome back to Let's Talk ECE. I'm Summer.
And I'm Rachel.
And today we're going to be talking about consistency. Before we start, I want to check in with you and how hearing that word consistency makes you feel. Does it make you feel annoyed because you try to be consistent, but life just keeps getting in the way? Does it make you feel maybe a sense of shame because you can't seem to stay consistent no matter how hard you try? Does it make you feel excited? Because, a little consistency goes a long way, right? Like, however you're feeling right now, I want you to acknowledge it, okay? Take a deep breath and come on this journey with us. Because today we're going to talk about consistency, not perfection.
Yes. And this is coming from two people who are both, we struggle a lot with consistency and in different ways. So it should be a really interesting episode, I think. We're going to talk about consistency in your personal life, why it's so hard, and talk about some tools to be a little bit more consistent. So I'm excited about that.
I love that. Okay, you guys, one of the reasons people struggle to be consistent is because learning something new is hard. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of brain power. When you learn something new, it might impact your sleep. It might just all of these feelings surrounding it, right? It's just challenging.
It is challenging. And I think one thing that we have to remember is that those tasks do get easier over time and with repetition. A lot of times when we're talking about consistency, if we have to talk about it, being consistent about it, that's because we're not doing it consistently, right? So they do take a lot more effort and a lot more time. And we get tired. We feel like we're going to feel that way forever about these tasks, but that's not the case. It really does get better. It does get easier to do those. We just have to be conscious about it, right?
Right. I think about this when I think about social media. So we're starting to post on social media or writing emails. And Rachel, we really struggled to be consistent because it was something we hated doing. Right? It was hard. And we felt this huge level of insecurity around it. But because we pushed through that discomfort and stuck with it, it's now just a normal part of our workday, right? It's something we do automatically. It's no longer our frog that we have to eat for breakfast. And those of you who don't know, there's a saying by Mark Twain that says, it's your job to eat a frog. Or if it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat two frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first. And so we have a whole podcast episode on that. Go back and look at Eat Your Frog for Breakfast. But it essentially means do the thing that you don't want to do right away so you can move on with the rest of your day and not get stuck in the anxiety of having to eat the frog, right? So I think another aspect of consistency that's really challenging for people is that it doesn't always give that instant gratification.
Yeah.
I would say, but when I would give tours at my program, at my school, I would tell parents, I would say, you guys, we're a society that literally carries the internet around in our pocket, right? We have same day delivery. We can have almost anything we want right away. And so we are a society that really likes instant gratification. And sometimes when we're talking about doing things consistently, we don't get that instant gratification.
Right.
Instant gratification feels good,
So good.
but it's not the actual end goal. Is that good feeling?
Yeah. And I really love that you brought that up, because instant gratification is such a huge part of it. And I think we can even go back to that example you're using about social media posts and emails, right? When I started doing those, there weren't a bunch of people liking them. We didn't have a bunch of people signing up. It made me feel like I was failing, because when we don't get instant gratification, it can feel like you're failing a little bit. It feels crappy. I hated it because I felt like that meant I was doing a bad job because I wasn't getting all of those things right away. But we stuck with it. We stayed really consistent. And how many times a week do we get told, like, oh my gosh, you guys are everywhere, right? Or, we went from having almost nobody to sign up to events where I'd send out like 5 emails in a row to did one social media post recently, and 30 people signed up for that webinar from one post. That's a huge growth. And that is the power of consistency. It wasn't instant,
Yes,
but it was worth it. And it took me pushing through that discomfort. And, it makes me think too of think about it from a leadership perspective, because I think a lot of leaders want that instant gratification when we set out a new expectation for a team. They want behavior to change right away. They want new policies to be followed right away. They want things to be immediate. But when we're working with people, it's just not. It takes time for people to understand new expectations. It takes time to remember and embrace new expectations. It all just takes time. So instead of just getting frustrated and throwing our hands up, we have to follow through with those expectations. We have to stay consistent. We can't just present it once or twice.
So true. Understanding that consistency is challenging because it doesn't give us that instant gratification, and remembering that things won't always feel so hard. And that's really going to transform your ability to show up consistently. Which actually brings me to the next thing I want to talk about, is like how consistency impacts us. So let's take some time and not even talk about the work, but let's talk about the benefits of consistency in our day-to-day life.
Well, and this is something you and I've talked about a lot, because I've had a lot going on in my life recently. And I want to make sure I'm showing up for work and showing up for my kiddo the best I can. And there are all of these changes, and it makes me exhausted, right? And if you're listening to this, I can pretty much guarantee you've been in a space where you're holding all of these responsibilities together, but letting go of some of that self-care. And that's just not sustainable long term. It's not.
Yes.
And, one of the things that really fell off to me, there were the last 2 weeks of summer, my son was home all the time. There's some work events happening, and something that I really enjoy is going to the gym. And this idea of driving 15 minutes to the gym, putting on workout clothes, getting sweaty, which means I have to take a shower. And do I really have time for a shower after I'm exhausted? It was a lot. But I didn't want to fall off. I wanted to keep going, even if I knew I wasn't going to go 100%. Right. So it's still being consistent and going. So, with encouragement from you, Summer, I really did make it a non-negotiable with myself. I continued going to the gym a couple times a week. Now, even still, next week will probably be the first week that I really get into doing my full workouts. But one of my workouts last week was 18 minutes. Like it wasn't long, but I kept being consistent and showing up.
Yes.
It's not about showing up perfectly. That's not what was important, but showing up consistently so I don't lose that pattern. That's what matters. And, I think it's funny because a lot of our clients have been talking about this. And then I had just gone to the gym, and there was a Mark Twain quote on the board that just said, continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. And I snapped a picture because it was so funny because we've been talking about this so much, where it is just keep showing up.
Yes. Well, okay, is it Mark Twain Day?
I think it is
Mark Twain quotes in the same episode. But no, I think that's so important. Continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. And I want you to sit with that.
Yeah.
What does continuous improvement mean to you? How do you show up consistently, at least in some capacity? Right? What are the areas of your personal life that you allow to fall off when you aren't heavily focused on it? Ooh, that's a big question. That's a really big question. And listeners, I want you to really think about it. And if you're the journaling type, take some time and journal, because these are good questions. If you're just the thinking type, that's me. I'm more the thinking, verbally processing type. Spend some time sitting with that. Where do you fall off when things get really busy? What are the things that you dread doing, not necessarily because they're hard, but it's hard to add into your life, right? Maybe it's reading. Maybe you love reading, but you're so busy and you can't get the time to read right now. See if audiobooks might work for you in the interim. Yeah. I think I just gave somebody that suggestion last week to, on your commute, listen to Audible or audiobooks that keep your mind in the headspace of work and you're utilizing your time wisely, right? If it's working out, just like Rachel did, can you go and do part of your workout? If it's walking, maybe you can't walk a mile every day right now, but you can find the time to walk around the block. Okay, so just really putting some thought into it and not getting stuck. It's so important. Yeah. And so when I think about that consistency at work, social media to me is just the easiest.
Yeah. Social media and Mark Twain today. That's what we've got for you.
but really, social media, it just, that's where my mind goes. And when I think about it, it's just so much, right? Like, which channels should we devote time to? Where should I put my attention? Oh, the algorithm shifted. What's it doing now? I feel like it's a full-time job in itself. Yeah. And at first it's fun, and then it becomes a chore, right? And if we all know that if you don't stay consistent online, it just goes away, because the online world moves fast. So thinking about your work life, right? What is the thing that just pops into your head and you're like, oh yeah, I really have to pay attention to that. And I don't necessarily love that aspect of my job right now. Maybe I will later. But what is that thing that pops into your mind where you're like, oh yeah, I really need to pay attention to this?
And thinking about it, we talk about it all the time, and we talked about it earlier. We're just the society of instant gratification. And just like in our personal lives, being consistent is important at work too. Staying consistent with tasks can help you build trust with your staff, get ahead of issues. If you stay consistent, you won't have to go back and spend time correcting things you let slide, or get people back into good habits because you kept up on it routinely. That is such an important aspect. And when we're talking about this instant gratification, I think just keeping in mind, like, we tend to go to the fires. And a lot of times being a director, being an owner, it is putting out fires all the time.
Yeah.
And you get some level of instant gratification for that, even if it's not something you want to do. Whereas if we take the time to really consistently set expectations, hold up those expectations, and maintain the small things, there aren't as many fires.
Let's talk about an example of this. This is good.
Yeah.
So you guys, when I owned the school, I remember one summer the playground was a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there were like sweatshirts and jackets and clothes were out there, paper cups were everywhere, toys were thrown around, and it was really not meeting my expectations. You know, I had a vision of what I wanted the space to look like, and I wanted it to be beautiful. And in Montessori, we have a saying, the best for the smallest. And that's what I was really expected.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big meeting with our team, and we walked them through the expectations. And then Rachel, you as the director had to go back in and hold our team accountable.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing there is like, it doesn't mean everybody was perfect after that meeting.
Right.
I mean, everybody pulled it together for like 3 days after the meeting, right? And then it's sliding back into old habits, because if there isn't that level of consistency, people are going to slide into it. So it was my job to poke out and set, check on things, making sure I was signing off before people left, that the playground had gotten picked up, just covering all of my bases in that way, so that this wasn't ever going to be that big of an issue again. But it took time and consistency. It wasn't, okay, cool, there was a meeting, now I don't ever have to worry about this again.
Right. And it seems to be the little things. So whether it's, dress code violations or playground, or even bigger things like supervision, cell phone policy, or, maybe emails that you have to respond to that you don't want to. Consistency can really help us meet our goals. It also helps us get ahead of issues. Because think about it, if that playground stayed messy, parents might have complained, right? You would have, you, Rachel,
Me,
you would have had to spend a lot more time putting out fires, right? Or maybe if one teacher would have been trained to keep it clean, and then
they really internalized it. Yeah, they really internalized it, and then nobody else was doing it. That could have created a ton of frustration on their end.
Right. They could have quit.
Yeah.
Right. And then you would have had this whole thing where now you're searching for a new staff member and we're short staffed and all of this stuff. So it can snowball. So that consistency piece leading to building trust with your staff.
Yeah. And it really does build trust with your staff, because I think one of the things that they see in that is if we hold them accountable, if we are consistent in all of these areas, they see us as trustworthy. Right? People see you as trustworthy when you are consistent. And whether that's holding them accountable or, telling them they're going to do something, that you're going to do something for them, when they see you being consistent all the time in whatever way, they feel like they can trust you. So there's not that worry. And I mean, I'm sure you've probably had a boss where you're like, you said this, but are you gonna actually do it? Because I have, like that just is something that happens. So it is something that goes on in the brain too. When people hear you and see you being consistent, they know that you will follow through with whatever you say.
Right. So clearly, consistency is very important in both your work life and your personal life. And we also know that we can't do all the things and make all the changes and expect to do it well. So I will leave you with something. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and when we're talking about that, who has made a New Year's resolution that is like, I am going to change my diet, work out for 4 hours every day, be vegan, and homeschool my children? Like wild, transformative things.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work to do that. So you guys, I want to leave you with something that really helps me when things get busy. and it's called the Kaizen philosophy. So Kaizen is a Japanese term meaning change for the better and continuous improvement. So just do a little bit each day. That Kaizen philosophy has really, really helped me be a little bit more consistent. So whether it's writing out a to-do list and breaking things down into manageable steps, figuring out where you fall off when things get super busy, right? That reflection piece we talked about earlier, and then make a plan for how to keep it in place and how to shift and adjust during those times if necessary. Find someone to hold you accountable, right? Just the same way I'm here for Rachel and her gym, hey, go to the gym. Don't eat those french fries, go to the gym, right? And then lastly, don't make promises you can't keep.
Yeah.
We don't want to become those bosses that people are talking about when they're like, oh yeah, they say things all the time, but it never happens. So don't make promises you can't keep. Just do a little bit each day to continue to improve, continue to get better. And suddenly it's a pattern. Suddenly it's a habit. And that's what consistency is. So if you found this information helpful, leave a comment below, like, follow, subscribe. And as always, we'll see you next time on Let's Talk ECE.
Bye, friends.